Hi guys, it's the launch. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to part 2 of our 3-part series for this sleeveless straight dress tutorial. So we're just going to get right into the video. So what I'm just doing here is cutting through the princess seam line on our pattern as such. Once that is done, this is what we have so far. Note guys that all the materials you need for this part is listed in the description box below. So I'm just gonna have my fabric here. I'm using Dorchester Stretch Linen fabric and it's on fold, so the selvage edges are placed together. And you will notice at the top of my fabric I drew a straight line across. That is just to straighten the fabric so that when I begin cutting I can have a nice clean finish. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark down 1/2 inch from the straight edge of the fabric that I just marked there, because remember earlier I had said that we have to add 1/2 inch at the top of the waist and at the bottom of the waist, because once we separated the pattern we need to add allowance for when we're ready to join them back together. So this is just me adding the 1/2 inch allowance as promised. I also mentioned that we're going to leave 2 inches at the back of our skirt and top pattern, so that this will be for our zipper allowance for when we're ready to insert our zipper. So I'm just marking 2 inches from the selvage edge and connecting those lines together in a straight vertical line, as you would see. Now I'm cutting the back pattern first, so I'm just lining up my pattern paper as so, ensuring that I leave the 1/2 inch above for the seam allowance. And guys, I only realized after I made a slight error here. The 1/2 inch allowance I originally drew at the top there, I was supposed to bring the pattern just onto that line just below, so that I would have the 1/2 inch allowance above. But that is completely fine because we still have the extra allowance at the bottom. The next thing we're going to do is that we're going to mark where our notch is and just make a snip there so that you know exactly where your dart is supposed to be placed. Now please note that the minor error of me not adding the 1/2 inch above will only make the dress a tiny bit shorter by 1/2 inch. But the fact that I added 2 inches allowance at the hem, I ended up getting at the length for the dress that I wanted originally, so it didn't really affect anything overall. However, try not to make that error as I did. So the next thing I'm doing, on the fold of the fabric, I'm placing the pattern like such, and I'm just doing the same thing as I did for the back, with the exception of adding the allowance at the front. There is no need for you to add allowance at the front. You just need to go ahead and cut it on fold as you see me doing here. Now once that is done, you just go ahead and bend it into or mark where your dart is supposed to be and give it a notch. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to cut out the pocket pieces. Now I realized that this scrap piece of fabric in between the two, I was able to get my pocket pieces there. So no need to waste fabric and go ahead and cut a new thing on a fold. You just go ahead and use that centerpiece once it's enough space and pin your pocket piece into place like so. Now we need 2 pieces with the curve and 2 with the full rectangle. However, I decided to go ahead and cut out 4 pieces of the full rectangle, because we can always go ahead and get the ones with the curve after, as you would see in a moment. So just go ahead, pin that into place and cut out your pocket pieces like so. So you should have 4 pieces in total. And once that is done, you can go ahead and take 2 pieces and have those separated so that you can make 2 pieces have the curve as we would need for a pocket. So if you don't want to destroy your pattern paper, you can go ahead and measure the dimensions 3 inches by 5 and create the curve on the fabric itself, or you can just go ahead and do like I'm about to do here, cut out the actual paper curve and then place the paper onto the fabric on 2 of the pieces only as mentioned before, and cut around the curve there for a pocket. Voila, we have 2 pockets. That was easy, right? Moving on. So this is our front of a skirt we're going to work on again. We're just going to put it back on the fold and we're going to take that same pocket pattern, place it onto a skirt so that we'll be able to cut out the pocket as well one time from the base. So just go ahead and place your pocket to the edge of the skirt from top to the side right there. Pin it into place and you can go ahead and cut out the curve. So once it's finished, both sides of the skirt at the front is supposed to have the curve as well, which you would see in a moment. Once you've done the right thing, the front of your skirt should look like this. Now we're going to go ahead and start cutting out the top pieces for the back and the front of our dress. So the first thing I'm going to do is extend that 2-inch seam allowance line there that was placed earlier for a skirt. We're just going to extend the line because we will need that 2-inch seam allowance for the back of the top as well. Now in case you're wondering, I went ahead and taped back the pattern together so that I can show you 2 ways in which you can go ahead and cut this out. You don't necessarily have to destroy the pattern by cutting it. You can leave it whole and still get the same results. So I'm going to show you first how I achieved this with the pattern as one piece, and then I'll separate it for the front and show you how I can get it cut out separately. So just going to go ahead and place our pattern on our fabric as such, 2 inches away from the edge, and pin it into place. Please know that when we did the initial calculations for pattern drafting, they have already included seam allowances, so there is no need for us to add seam allowance when we're rejoining the princess darts. And this is where you see me just adding the 1/2 inch allowance. Yes, I know. I forgot to add it for the top of the skirt, but we're still going to add it for the top of the top basically, because you don't need it to end up a whole 1 inch shorter than it needs to be. And we're just going to go ahead and cut that right out. And you notice that I extended the line for the neckline and for the waistline just straight across, following the same curve and everything as the pattern originally had. Now I'm just going to take some chalk and mark where the dart starts at the waist and where it starts at the armhole, so that we can go ahead and curve it on the fabric itself. we just take our curve as we did initially when we were creating the pattern and just go ahead and curve it on the fabric itself like this. And this is what we would have. Now we can just go ahead and just cut through that marking, and this is what we would have once that is done. This completes the back of our dress. Now we're going to go ahead and have the fabric unfold as we always did and place the front piece. But before we do that, we need to go ahead and cut through the front neckline. Remember that our front neckline was originally 3 inches down. It was 3 inches in comparison to the back. And I'm going to also go ahead and cut off the armhole area. Our armhole was 1/2 inch deeper for our front than it was for the back, so that's what I just did. And I'm going to show you, as promised, how you can go ahead and separate the pattern and still achieve the same thing. So all you're going to do now is just cut through the princess seam line as we have done before. I rejoined it, and just go ahead and pin the separate pieces on the pattern, on the fabric, as I am doing here. So it's really up to you if you want to leave the princess seam line whole, but for the front you just need to remember that the neckline must be deeper. You didn't have to cut off the neckline either. You could have just marked the points and curved them on the fabric itself. But I mean, why create a pattern if we're just gonna have all the markings on the pattern and not make life easier? So I personally find it's easier once you just separate all of the pattern pieces you need. That way you can just go ahead and pin them down on the fabric and just cut. We're still only adding the 1/2 inch allowance at the bottom of the top piece. We're not adding any allowance at the princess seam lines, any at the necklines, the shoulders, or anything of that sort. And guys, this basically completes the cutting out tutorial. When I upload part 3, we may have to do some cutting. Well, not me. We definitely would have to do some cutting for the facings of the front and the back of the dress. But I prefer to do those once we have sewn those pieces together. But this is all the pieces that we need to cut out for this dress. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope that it was easy enough to understand. I hope that you learned something. I hope I made it simple enough. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel and for watching my videos. This motivates me. Don't forget to comment and ask any questions you wish in the comment section below. And thank you. Stay tuned for part 3. Bye bye.